Greetings and star blessings, everybody. I've had some really tripped out things happening. So I wanted to bring it up and talk about it with you guys because you may be experiencing similar things or relate to the material. And it's all got to do with the soul because it's all got to do with the archetype or zodiac sign Scorpio. And I am talking about tropical zodiac today. So basically, we're going to be focusing on a number of different feminine divinities that are all in Scorpio at the moment. You can see three of them up here. That's Black Moon Lilith, that's Goddess Vesta, and that's Goddess Juno, all in Scorpio. Now, before I go there, let me just show you what happened. And this is how things always happen for me. The goddesses somehow call in my attention, and they do it in really interesting ways. So this Capricorn full moon that we just had was shit. I'm just going to say it straight out. It was awful. I knew it was going to be because it was square Ceres and Chiron. And so for those 2 days around that full moon energy, I was just processing a lot of different things because that full moon happened to be in my 12th house conjunct my Mars. So it was awful. I'll just be honest, it was. But coming out of that now, because the moon for me in that example has now moved into my first house, so there's a very clear sense of knowing and seeing what that was all about for me. Now, last night when I was just sitting there reflecting, and I was looking at the full moon through my lounge room, and I video recorded it, and it just looked amazing. So I was sitting there and I was looking at the full moon, and then I looked at the chart for the moment, and basically this is the chart that I looked at, right? So it was about this time, about 10 p.m. last night, okay, which was 12th of July for me. And there was Juno, Vesta, Black Moon, Lilith in the eighth house in Scorpio, right? So that got me thinking quite deeply. Then I thought to myself, okay, well, this is really interesting. We've got these three divinities, all feminine goddesses, very powerful ones, all in Scorpio. Then we've got Goddess Persephone, who's in Pisces, and I've done a video on this, who happens to be sitting at the midpoint of Pluto and Ceres. Okay, now Persephone is a Scorpio archetype. She belongs over here in the eighth house with all these goddesses. And she's at the midpoint of Pluto and Ceres, which animates her story very strongly on the earth at the moment. And I have spoken about that in a previous video, so I won't go into that story again. But I just want to bring some context in to help you understand why this is pretty mind-blowing at the moment. We've got these three over here in Scorpio. We've got Persephone at the midpoint of Pluto. Pluto rules Scorpio. Pluto connects to the soul. Scorpio connects to the soul. And Ceres, the mother of Persephone. So Pluto and Ceres basically highlighting Persephone's story at the moment as we speak. This is all Scorpio-Pluto territory. Now, last night as I was sitting there reflecting on all of that, I was going into these deep kind of deep feelings, deep states, deep reflective processes relative to my own life and certain things that have been going on in my life and so forth. And then this morning I woke up and this is what happens. It just continues, right? All these bombs just keep dropping in, but they're not bombs as in catastrophic. They're just like downloads, they're just like light bulbs and breakthroughs. And so I woke up and I found this. Now, can you see what this is? This is a crop circle of the two moons and the Venus star point, Venus star in the center. This is a symbol for the goddess Hecate. Now, Hecate is a goddess of the underworld as well. So she's a Scorpio type of goddess. Here's the Venus star, right, at the center of that crop circle. Um, and here's just a close up of this crop circle that basically uh, appeared on the 12th, 13th of July, this morning, in other words. Would have been last night when it was photographed. It's on YouTube as well. I got it from a page called Crop Circles. UFOs, Ancient Mysteries, Scientific Speculations, right? That's just the name of the page. So, anyway, that tripped me out when I saw that because anytime I see something that, where the pentagram shows up, I just, my something happens in my soul and I just something gets woken up quite deeply and the Venus star especially because in my own chart my Venus star point is in Scorpio and it's in my 10th house. So I was destined to really talk about the sky and the goddess and the stars. It was just my fate, if you like. So all this stuff here that I found this morning, which, just my hairs stood up on my body. It was just with excitement, actually. So then I thought, well, okay, let's have a look at where the hell Hecate is, because those are the symbols for Hecate. So let me just bring this up here. Now, what have I got it at? Because I had to do a little bit of fiddling around. Okay, September. So what I did was the date that I initially put in was the 1st of July. This is an asteroid ephemeris that you can access for free online, by the way. If you just type in asteroid ephemeris, you'll get this particular page and you can put in any name you want. And pretty much it's got thousands and thousands of asteroids there. Okay, so there's Hecate. Now, when I put it in, it was the 1st of July, which was what, 12, 13 days ago. And Hecate was at 0 Scorpio, right? So that 0 Scorpio corresponds with me finding this crop circle. So this crop circle appears on the earth in basically in the United Kingdom, in the UK, the day that Hecate is at 0 Scorpio. Now, that's not coincidental. That's very, very meaningful. There's something going on with these underworld goddesses and divinities. Very, very powerful stuff's going on with the earth at the moment. And what these goddesses are up to in the underworld. We'll get to some details in a moment. So then I thought, okay, well, when did Hecate actually get into Scorpio? And I had a look at that ephemeris, and basically it's very, very interesting because Hecate actually got into Scorpio late December of 2024. So what happened was she went into Scorpio and then at some point she went retrograde. Okay. And therefore she is still in Scorpio because she went retrograde. Now what's that? That's 7 months in and she's still in Scorpio and she doesn't leave Scorpio until September. So her placement in Scorpio, given that she is a divinity of the underworld, let me just put this back over here because I want to draw from some material. Um, so we've got Hecate in Scorpio, who is a divinity of the underworld. And by the way, incidentally, Hecate is very much linked to the lunation cycle. That's why you see that crop circle with those symbols. That's one of the most famous symbols that's been used in so-called witchcraft, right? Which over time has picked up, a projection of it being connected to black magic or dark magic or evil things and so on and so forth. And it's nothing of the sort in its essence, of course. But as we know, the the dark feminine, has been distorted for probably thousands of years, right? Not probably, it has for thousands of years. It's been distorted, and therefore the conditioned uh, psyche of humanity has a distorted perspective of the dark feminine, because of what's projected on it. And it's all bullshit because the dark feminine is so incredibly powerful when it's integrated, right? And understood and respected and honored in the way that it needs to be. And then it's um, used, if you like, in order to gain greater consciousness, greater awareness, and used with its magical principles in order to heal and to uncover deep occult truths. And that's indeed what Hecate corresponds to as well. She's a triple moon goddess, right? If you see the, sculptures and architecture and ancient, depictions of her, you see she's like a triple goddess. It's like three in the one, right? And that symbolizes the fact that she's fluid in her movement, in that she has the ability, unlike most others. Mercury, Hermes, is the other one that has this ability to basically enter all spheres, all different worlds, the upper world, earth, and the underworld. Mercury had that ability, and so does Hecate. And Hecate was the one that actually, both Hermes and Hecate actually, but Hecate in particular, some of her symbols are, one of her symbols is a torch, right? And when Persephone was abducted into the underworld by Pluto, and Ceres pretty much made the earth barren as a result of her pain and grief, and wanted to punish everybody for the pain she was feeling, because her daughter was abducted by Pluto. The earth was made barren. That's how the seasons have come about, spring, winter, summer, autumn, etc., right? Because of this story. It was Hecate, because she had the power to go into the underworld and come back to the earth, and she was able to go into the upper world. It was her that helped Ceres actually eventually find Persephone in the underworld. And with her torch, right, which is a light, obviously, she helped Persephone find her way back up into the earth with her mother. So Hecate plays a big role in the story of Persephone's emancipation, if you like, right, from her abductor, Pluto. Hecate corresponds to magic very, very much. And as I said before, that's been often um, um, misinterpreted or, projected in a dark way. Now, all these divinities in Scorpio at the moment, there's no two ways about it. They're all doing some serious work in the underworld. And, Juno's been in Scorpio for a while, so has Vesta and Black Moon Lilith, because I use the true position of Black Moon Lilith. It means she jumps around. In 1 year, she can be in and out of 3 or 4 different signs. She's much harder to track this way, but at the moment, she's been in Scorpio for a while. She's been sort of dipping in and out of Libra and Scorpio all year, more or less. Okay. Now, Scorpio is an archetype that takes us into what's called the soul, which is very difficult to put into words, because the soul is the essence of who we are, right? But it's not a material thing that you can point to and say, oh, there's the soul. That's what it looks like. There it is over there. We can't do that, right? The soul it's ineffable. There's no words to really describe it. So in all my years of studying and researching and um, doing my own private personal work, soul work, and so forth, it's the way I can sense it, understand it, and connect with it is through my intuition, through my instincts, um, and through my intuition and instincts, I'm able to make these correlations and observations with things that come to me, things that appear, situations that occur in my own life, and so forth. And particularly when I don't listen to my instincts or my intuition, that's when things, that's when trouble happens. I find it really fascinating that, Hecate has been in Scorpio since December. And I've had some really mind-blowing, let me just pause for a second. Really mind-blowing experiences actually since December, January. I'd say January from the beginning of this year, which connects to certain individuals in my personal life, that is, and the different things that happened to me that were very scorpionic, and unfortunately the negative side of Scorpio. And that included, and I did mention this ages ago, that included me being out one night and a guy spiking my drink, which was a pretty intense experience because it literally almost knocked me out completely, right? It sort of paralyzed my body, but I was in a public place, so I was lucky. Now, I bring that up because Hecate corresponds to magic potions and potions that can help heal, but also potions that are poisonous and can kill people. She corresponds to both. So it depends on, who's working with the energy of Hecate, right? Whether it's consciously or unconsciously. Now, it's no coincidence that, I had somebody poison my drink while Hecate was in Scorpio at the time. And there were some other individuals throughout the course of this year who have done similar things to me as well. And it was, a very Scorpio experience, of course, because it was in the nightlife industry. It was I went to certain dance events with certain individuals who, you know, uh, were of that dark side of Scorpio, right? Not good for me at all. And, long story short, in the end, I got rid of all those people, basically. I just literally blocked them out of my life completely. One of them I had only met twice. One of them I had only met three times, and another one I had only met about three times as well. So they were all very new people. And it's interesting because all three of them had a similar agenda, and all three of them carried that same energy. It was a dark Scorpio energy, which was very manipulative. Now, look, Scorpio itself, corresponds to a number of different things. As much as it is about metamorphosis and the soul and transformation, it also corresponds to evil and violence and sexual violence, darkness, secrets, alchemy, It corresponds to fear of vulnerability. It corresponds to spying, compulsions, corrupt power, magic, curses, um, abandonment, loss, um, deep psychological uh, complexes, paranoia, stuff like that. And one of the individuals that was a bit twisted, who was around me only about 3 times, that individual was severely paranoid. Um, that's because of the substance usage that that individual is um, is taking, right? I'll just be very honest about that. And although I knew that, it didn't deter me from developing a friendship, because I tend to be very open-minded. And I just sort of, for the most part, I really do try and accept people for who they are, because I know that, first of all, no one's perfect. Secondly, you can't change anyone. And thirdly, there's always something to learn from things that show up. That includes people. So I kind of can go with the flow, with pretty much any situation. But then, when I realize that this situation or this individual or this story or whatever it is, once I realize what this is really about for me, what I need to learn from it, um, and if I can see that it's more or less just bringing me harm, it's not bringing anything good to me, then I'm very Scorpio myself in that way, where I pretty much just cut, I just cut the cord. And I generally don't go back. Sometimes I do go back. I won't say that I have never done that. Sometimes I do, because if it's somebody that I've got really deep feelings for or something like that, it can be quite complex. It can be quite difficult. I'm sure you can all relate to that. But for the most part, I tend to be very scorpionic in that way of just cutting things loose when I can see that they are only intending to bring me some type of harm. And I've even had a lot of dreams, that have shown me very clear messages of all these different little stories that have been occurring all this year with different people and so forth. And the dreams are just showing me images and giving me signs of further things that I've needed to realize and understand, right? But it's just mind blowing to me that all this year I've had all these events go on, and Hecate has been in Scorpio. And as I said, she connects to potions that can either kill you or potions that can heal you. It just depends on whose hands this this ability lays in, right? So fast forward to the present moment, there's a lot of things going on the earth that are still incredibly troubling, um, incredibly deceptive, incredibly confusing. And then there's, you know, like each individual with their personal stories and circumstances. And with the divinities all being in Scorpio, the female divinities, Black Moon, Lilith, Vesta, Juno. First of all, Black Moon Lilith is, she's the archetype of the rebel. She's the wild feminine that will take no shit from anybody, and put her in Scorpio. And oh boy, you don't want to mess with the Lilith in Scorpio. Not a wise thing to do. But what's going on here with Lilith and Vesta and Juno, these three divinities, and also Hecate, in Scorpio as well. It's clearly bringing up the shadow aspects within ourselves, and the shadow aspects around us in our life, perhaps things that are showing up or appearing, that we may be projecting certain things onto. And or, although I do fundamentally believe that in overall, everything and anything that shows up is part of our learning and growth. But there is something in the world of darkness that's quite sinister, that people use and prey on others, right? Um, and abuse uh, that power for personal gain through sinister agendas. And for many, it's conscious, and for many others, it's very unconscious. So I think being aware of these sorts of energies and these sorts of things is very, very important because they do exist. And anybody who walks around on this earth and just thinks that it's just all as it appears and there's nothing more going on, um, an individual who is so far removed and so disconnected from the spirit world. And it is a perspective on reality that just is one dimensional. And to me, I can't understand that because, well, I can understand it, but I've never been like that. I've always been very, very aware since I was a child that there's this energy, there is this other world, there is a lot more going on that's much more powerful than the denseness of the reality before us. So I've been aware of that since I was a little child. So having an awareness and an understanding about these things empowers us to transform and to work deeply with our soul's mission and to ultimately purge negative patterns that prevent us from growing. And that's what I think these feminine divinities up here at the moment, and Persephone being at the midpoint of Pluto and Ceres, and Hecate being in Scorpio, those divinities are really active in the underworld at the moment. Translation: big things are going on in our own unconscious at the moment from a soul level. And this is a really powerful, for lack of a better word, a really powerful time frame for us to really be purging a lot of the things that that have been imprinted on us, conditioned, mindsets, conditioned values, systems, all sorts of things that we have integrated knowingly or unknowingly throughout the course of our life. And because in the background we've got, Pluto in Aquarius, sextiling the Saturn, Neptune, and now trine Uranus, these are the big guns in the background, moving the clock, as it were, shaping and shifting the patterns in the entire collective unconscious, because there is a new earth being reborn as we speak. And if we are to create a new earth and we are to, match up with that, align with that, then is it not the case that we must purge, Scorpio, the matters within ourselves, the conditioned imprints and layers that we have outgrown or that have been false? Because we can believe and follow anything, even though it's completely false. We can make ourselves believe anything. So Scorpio is very much about, purging. And the other thing as well about Scorpio and the underworld and the unconscious and the soul and these feminine divinities all in Scorpio at the moment, quite apart from the fact that they are assisting us in purging some deeply embedded and inherited psychic imprints, which is very, very hard to shift. You know, typically, like on a normal day-to-day basis, it's not like you wake up and you just say to yourself, oh, I'm just going to shift, this belief that I've had for the last 20 years. It doesn't work like that. It takes us a long time to really shift and move things, right? Nothing happens overnight. But when we have these portals coming in with all these divinities in Scorpio, it's a massive golden opportunity. And the other thing, the flip side to this coin, which is another level, is that, of course, Scorpio and the eighth house and these feminine goddesses, all in Scorpio, are the access point to the deepest occult messages, insights, inner standing, and understanding. The occult just means what's hidden. So when you have a bunch of, goddesses all busy in the underworld at the moment, they are helping us work through really deep imprinted patterns within us. Now, that's going to scare the fuck out of a lot of people. It's pretty heavy energy. If you don't know what's going on and you don't understand the the meaning or the significance to what's showing up, and if you don't have tools to work with to know how to confront these aspects, head on, as it were, it can be very, very scary, which is completely understandable. It's not a judgment, it's completely understandable. And most people will be in that category because most people belong to the consensus category. That's not my opinion, that's just a fact. So, for all of you out there listening to this at the moment, and I know anybody listening to this and listening to me has definitely some kind of understanding and appreciation and their own journey and insights about these sorts of things that I'm pointing to relative to the context of your own life story. And therefore, I'm sure you would appreciate what you are hearing. But it might also be that it hadn't occurred to you that this alignment, or the alignment of all these things, happening right now. And as I said, the series Persephone Pluto alignment, that is there until January next year. Hecate is going to be in Scorpio until September, and she's been there all year. Juno, Vesta, and Black Moon Lilith, I think, will be in Scorpio pretty much till the end of the year, if not even into next year. And then Vesta and Juno, well, let's have a look. So I haven't actually seen that far ahead for these two ladies. Let's just see. See Black Moon Lilith back in Libra there, right? Because I'm using the true position. Okay, let's just see what happens. All right, so Vesta leaves Scorpio September, same time Hecate. Juno in October. Let's just fast forward a little bit. Okay, there's Juno in Capricorn. There's this. All right, so they're definitely finishing their journey in Scorpio in the months of September and October. So basically, all this energy has been active, throughout this year so far. And it is very heavy and it is very intense. And it also is, for a lot of people, it might go unnoticed, you know, um, in the sense where, uh, you know, that they're just not in tune with it. Because, first of all, not only is Scorpio the archetype of the unconscious soul, the underworld, and so forth, it's a feminine sign. Scorpio is a feminine sign. That's a very important point because we have all these feminine divinities in this feminine archetype. The feminine holds this vibration that is deep and hidden. And that's why it terrifies the fuck out of the consensus reality. And that's why it's been, um, what's the word that I used earlier? Not what's projected onto in a distorted. Thank you. It's distorted. The distortion of the power of the feminine is unfucking believable still to this day. Even in the context of the atrocities that are occurring on certain places on the earth with, I'm going to say it, male, patriarchal, masculine systems that essentially are about greed and power and control and have nothing invested and nothing to do with the honor of the feminine power because they are absolutely fucking terrified of it because some of these individuals in these high places absolutely know the power of the dark feminine and the feminine period. And although it may appear on the surface that the masculine is the more dominant force relative to, the systems in play, there's so much that's happening from a hidden perspective, which is the feminine. The feminine is hidden. That you can't have a conversation with a person who lives in the consensus reality and open their eyes to the depth and complexity and power of this energy and these goddesses and these divinities. You can't convince them that something else is going on that you're just not fucking aware of. You simply cannot. You can't penetrate the density of the consensus mindset. But you don't need to. All we need to do, for those of us that are deeply connected and in touch with these very powerful feminine deities, because they're all inside us. As above, so below, as within, so without, as the soul, so the universe. Hermes Trismegistus said that. So all this energy is actually within us. And the sky just mirrors back down to us these portals that get ignited within us when we are perceptive, intuitive, aware, conscious, awake, and ready to receive, to be open enough to receive what is being offered for our own soul's growth. And that's precisely what these unbelievable feminine divinities are doing in Scorpio at the moment. And lastly, I'll just leave it at, which I was going to say earlier, because of the sheer volume of power in these energies right now, as I said, nothing changes overnight, right? Transformation is not an easy thing. People talk about transformation in, mainstream popular self-help books and whatever. And you've got these so-called gurus and whatnot selling their courses and so-called spiritual leaders and teachers in certain communities, selling you a 5-day course where, if you do this transformative course, you will absolutely transform your life and attract $1 million and your perfect soulmate. What a bunch of fucking bullshit. I really cannot stand those fake, phony individuals that prey on people's vulnerability and weakness. You don't need anything like that to help you transform, and nor will it actually help you transform. Transformation comes from the desire within ourself, period. So the windows are open, the doors are open, the cosmic doors and windows are open at this very moment for us to face all those things within ourselves that we are ready to purge, to transform. And even if it's just one thing or one pattern or one belief or one particular way of viewing or entering relationships, for instance, this is all very much relationship material as well. Let's actually just talk a little bit about that. Because Scorpio, if you're looking at your birth chart, right, or a chart for that matter, the areas of relationship are basically houses 5, 7, and 8. In terms of, more specifically, in terms of lovers that turn into a committed relationship that might turn into a marriage if you believe in the patriarchal system of marriage. Marriage is in the 7th house. The 5th house is when you meet somebody and the Zaza Zoom goes bling, bling, bling. You've got the attraction, the desire. It's exciting, and you want to have fun and all that all the sensual delights. That's the 5th house. The 7th house, and I'm just summarizing here, there's many more complex layers to all of this, of course. 7th house is where you might start defining the connection between you and that person, and you might start defining it as, okay, this could really turn into a relationship. I'm digging this person. I'm really, enjoying getting to know this person, and I think we can really probably develop a relationship through this connection. That sort of stuff starts to take form in the 7th house. The 8th house is where you will see their soul if they allow you. So all these divinities in Scorpio at the moment, taking us into that really deep, complex level inside ourselves and inside others, if we are entangled with others or connected with others, or having, personal relationships with others. And I'm not talking about your boss. When it comes to the 8th house, we're talking about very deep connections, but the 8th house can correspond to ancestry with family and things like that as well, which is why I said each house has multiple layers. So Juno is the goddess of commitment, also known as the goddess of marriage. She was the wife of Zeus. So when Juno lights up, she brings in the matters of contractual agreements, commitment. How committed are you to this person, to this relationship? How committed are they to you? Lilith is not looking for commitment. She's looking for equality. If she doesn't get equality, she just pretty much gives you the middle finger and takes off. And if you piss her off, she'll do a lot more than just the middle finger. But the point is that with these energies here in Scorpio, there's a lot that's been stirred up in our own unconscious about our own fears, about our own vulnerabilities, about things that we struggle with or are scared of ourselves to show to others for fear of not being understood or accepted. This all comes up with these divinities in Scorpio. And Vesta, well, Vesta is a virgin goddess. But on the other hand, she also is a goddess of, she's a goddess of focus, the principle of uh, the deepest focus you could possibly imagine. Because when she puts her focus into something, it is to the exclusion of everything else. I've got a Mars Vesta conjunction, and I speak through life experience of many years on this planet so far. So Vesta in Scorpio is looking to light the flame of her own soul, and she has a very deep penetrative focus at the moment on her own soul's growth. That's you, our own soul's growth. Vesta and the Vestal Virgins, I love the stories of them, that the priestesses that she had, um, none of them were virgins. Neither was Vesta. They basically slept with anybody they wanted to, anytime they wanted to, and they walked away every time. And that's the point about Vesta. She's only committed to herself, to nobody else, just herself. That's it. And that's not in an egotistical, selfish way. That's in a pure, holistic way. She's tending to the flame of her own heart and soul. And she was so free in her own self that she was able to lay with anybody and get up and move on the very next second. Interesting archetype, Vesta, deeply complex. Remember when Saturn swallowed all his children, which is why Saturn corresponds to fear. He swallowed all his children because he feared that they would overthrow him. Now, Vesta was the first one to go in. She's one of his children. She was the first one to go in, and she was the last one to come out. And that is a very important point to the depth of her story. It means that she stayed ingested the longest inside, which is a reflection of the internal, inner feminine energy that she speaks to. She's so mysterious, and that mystery is encapsulated in the fact that she stayed inside the longest out of all the children. So Vesta here in Scorpio is helping us do the work for that spark, that flame in our heart and soul, that we should honor ourselves. We need to honor ourselves instead of trying to find that recognition or whatever it is from another, so that we can feel that our flame, our fire in our heart is alive. So you see, all these goddesses right here, right now, are so freaking powerful. I absolutely just love this energy. But once again, it is not easy, because as much as it is about all the things that I've pointed to and much, much more, it is also about, it brings up a lot of uncomfortable shit. The Scorpio in the eighth house, it's still waters run deep. The depth of that archetype, because it corresponds to the soul. Can you measure the depth of the soul? Can you say it starts here and it ends there? Abso-fucking-lutely not. So the depth is, it's infinite. Okay. I think I will leave it there, and I hope this is helpful to you in whichever way that is. Love to hear your comments and questions. And just one more thing before I go. I mentioned that Hecate connects to the moon's cycle. And if I can just show you this. So there's Hecate. This is the moon's cycle. These are all the different divinities that connect to the moon's cycle. Now, Hecate, look at where she's placed. Look at the moon, last crescent on this side, new crescent on the right-hand side. So the dark zone, when the moon is dark, that's Hecate's zone. She rules that dark moon. So pretty much every month, Hecate has a space in the lunation cycle where she comes in and brings in her magic. But at the moment, she's in Scorpio and has been for 7 months and will be for another couple of months. So something very powerful and profound is happening in the deep earth and underneath the earth, in the underworld, things that are so much more powerful than words could really convey or describe relative to how this is going to impact the patriarchal structural systems. And look, for fuck's sake, sorry to use the F word a few times, but I'm just fucking blown away by this. What, I mean, fancy this showing up today. I don't know what your thoughts are on crop circles. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you have some theories or ideas, whatever it is. I've always been blown away by crop circles. I haven't studied them extensively, I'll be honest, but this particular crop circle that showed up today is just pure fucking magic. It shows up when Hecate is at 0 of Scorpio. So if this shit doesn't blow your mind, frankly, I don't know what will. Reach out if you want to work on any of this with me or anything else for that matter. If this sort of stuff is too, I don't know, whatever for you, we can look at, much more simple things. It doesn't matter. It's not about, it's simply about what your needs are. Okay. And I work with people from the point of view of what they need, not what I think they need, but what you need that you can communicate to me. And then I will find the answers through all the symbols. Much love and see you soon.